Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear friends. Again, on a 22nd time, we are meeting for Forum 2000 conference here in Prague. Let me quickly introduce the panelists of the panel, which is called a critical review of the current state of democracy. It's a very ambitious title, and by the way, the theme of the conference this year, it's very ambitious, but very important, because most of us feel last few years that something is happening. Some of us are able to translate it into statistics, some of us into the scientific articles to interpretation. Some of us just feel a little bit lost in understanding what's happening with us, with the democracy, with the values on which we trust that the life is based on. But let me introduce our panelists. We were supposed to be 4 panelists and myself. The first one is Alina Mungiu-Pippidi, the Romanian/German politologist, scientist, which will give us the more, maybe less emotional, but more accurate explaining what's happening. Mr. Tomáš Petříček, the first Deputy Minister of the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and long-term diplomat, which served also in Brussels and follow these themes for quite a long time, and Michal Abramovich, president of Freedom House from United States. The Freedom House we all know, so these are the 3. And the 4th one was supposed to be Joshua Wong from Hong Kong. Unfortunately, he's not here, but fortunately he's not in prison, so he was able at least to record the message and send it to us.
Hello, I am Joshua Wong from Hong Kong, activist who led the Umbrella Movement 4 years ago, and also Secretary General of a newfound political party, democracies. I have been locked up in prison for 100 days due to the civil disobedience and Occupy action to confront and against Beijing suppression. Unfortunately, now I still need to handle the court case, and now I'm on bail pending appeal. And at the same time, one of the bail conditions is the court of Hong Kong just hold my passport and ban all of my travel abroad. That's the reason that I can't come to join all of you guys in Forum 2000. Fight for democracy is a long-term battle, especially under the threat and pressure of China. It's not easy for Hong Kong people to get and achieve autonomy for our own city. However, youngsters just like me at the age of 21, we hope to try our best and to encourage everyone in the world. If we realize that it's a long-term battle, we will try our best and until the day we get back democracy, because time is on our side. Next year, around April to May, I need to face the trial again. I hope in the good scenario, I don't need to serve jail sentence, but otherwise, I may be the one who will be locked in prison again. But compared to the one live in Xinjiang, Tibet, I believe what the price I need to pay is just a small piece of cake. Long live democracy. Hope all of you guys enjoy Forum 2000. Thank you.
Mr. Petříček, Czech Republic was for decades one of the countries which show to a lot of others example that it's worth to move towards democracy, that it's worth to open the country, that it's worth to build a new society on the respect to human rights, and also offered these values to others. It was appealing, by the way, with all the problems which we have in Central Europe. It is still appealing for the colleagues in Ukraine or Georgia, and the view, not talking about other countries which are even much less free. But generally, do you think that democracy and societies based on the human rights respect and liberal democracy, that we are somehow losing our appeal, that we are less interesting for others, or that the democracy in a current state is getting to the moment when it's losing energy or vision? What's happening in your opinion?
I don't think that the democracy is losing appeal. It certainly is still the most attractive model on which the society can work. And if we can trust the food vote, I believe that we can still see that democracy is still attractive and has a great legitimacy. People are voting very often by their feet, and Europe, North America, Australia are still countries where people are migrating to, and this shows that liberal democracy is still something which is of great appeal to people all around the world. I agree that liberal democracy is now under pressure, not only in Europe but globally. And I think that we have focused for a very long time to so-called input legitimacy. We have focused on having free elections, on protecting the rule of law, but we forget to some extent to strengthen the output legitimacy of our societies. That is to say that large part of the society is now considering that the democratic regimes are slower to decide, that they are not delivering very efficiently. And I think that this is something where we can strengthen the legitimacy and where we can still improve. We need to deliver reforms, we need to deliver agenda which is strengthening the social cohesion of our societies. And this is not through something we can call managed democracy. This is through increasing resilience of our societies and improving our decision-making processes.
Thank you. I hope that it's the case, that we are just slowing down a bit, but the statistics are horrible. If we turn to statistics and what's happening around the globe, it looks that, you know, it's a worst period since the World War II regarding the democracy. If I may ask Michael to comment it, how it looks from a point of view of Freedom House and globally, please.
Well, thank you for having me. I very much like the way the minister framed it, that I do feel that democracy has not lost its long-term appeal, but we are in what some might have described a democracy recession for the last 10 to 15 years. If you look at our signature report, Freedom in the World, which we started in 1972, there was a long period really of consistent democratic advance, which we can't forget that there was a fall, there was a liberation in Eastern Europe, there was the fall of Latin American dictatorships, there was continuum progress, and now we're in a period of backsliding. And if you look at our scores, we had in 2017 about 70 countries experienced declines in political rights and civil liberties, and only 35 had improvements. So it is a very difficult and challenging time for Democrats, but I just would like to say that this is a consistently revitalizing enterprise, and we are often surprised. Just in the last year, countries like Ethiopia, Malaysia, Armenia, diverse countries from all over the world, were experiencing what one could argue would be, positive democratic reform. So just when you think things are bleak, it will surprise you, because in the long term, as you say, I think democracy still has a lot of long-term appeal. Thank you.
Why why we are losing the appeal, why we are using the self-confidence, sometimes kind of a vision how to continue with the problems, of course, that nothing is better and better and better. That's an illusion, and some up and downs are probably a natural part of every process. But this crisis and this situation looks a bit more serious than the small hops. Alina?
Well, what I would first suggest is that we reflect on the question that we put. I mean, we say we are losing appeal, or democracy is losing appeal. But who are we? And what is democracy in the view of us present here? My guess is that what we mean is that liberal democracy is losing, because otherwise all the surveys that I have seen, world values surveys in particular, show that people all over the world want to elect their leaders, and they want to be able to kick them off when they no longer like their leaders, either by elections or by revolution or whatever. But actually it is very appealing and naturally appealing to get rid of a tyrant father if he's out there. So I don't think we lost on this front. Where I think things have become more problematic, and here I move to my second point, so to speak, is that I think the reason we feel that today we are experiencing a regress is that because we were so successful before, 20, 30 years ago. We simply filled around the world with democracies or with nominal democracies, and we somehow expected, because these countries had the democratic forms, that their content will also become more and more liberal in time. And this is very much what didn't happen, because people simply stopped at the first thing. They like having elections, but then whom they elect people whom we don't like. You know, we don't like regimes which do not put any value on gender equality. We do not like regimes which discriminate gays, and some of the big battles in which we are involved around the world these days are not battles about democracy narrowly defined as elections, but are cultural battles about our understanding of democracy. In Europe, democracy is respectful towards minorities and accepts a greater degree of diversity, and also in the United States and in the former Anglo-Saxon world. In the rest of the world, this is not the case. Also, another third thing, which I think is quite important, is that we also expected that these democracies will be very clean and their elites were going to rule in the interest of the people. And it's now more than 10 years since the number of systematically corrupt countries around the world, democracies, is the double of the number of autocracies. In other words, we have about 80 democracies where actually the rule of the game is whoever comes to government spoils resources for their cronies, versus only 40 autocracies. The reason just being because we have less autocracies, because we were so successful 20, 30 years ago. But this actually leads to a disenchantment of people with the performance of democracies, because they vote and vote and then they ask, what are elections for? We are only bringing kleptocrats regardless who wins. And I think that this further step from the institution of elections to the quality of democracy is an essential step where we didn't have many successes to report. You may not know, but there is, you know, with the exception of Estonia, I think there is not one country around the world to have continued to progress towards good governance in the past 15 years. Simply the world is not improving, not at all. But actually what we see is that people like Mr. Orban very smartly learned from people like Mr. Erdogan, and they learn how to use all kind of means, which sometimes are paralegal means, to capture the state. And therefore remaining democratic, because they're elected, definitely, and elected, endorsed by huge majorities, they hollow out the contents of democracy. And here I think that the challenge lies.
Yeah, but in the era of the modern technologies of informations which are instantly available about almost everything, in the era of growing individualism of people, one would expect that, at least in Europe and in the electoral democracies, let's say, in Balkans, in the Eastern partnerships, in the part of Africa, that the people will be genuinely interested in deepening or improving the democracy from just electoral democracy. And I agree with you that it is also something which is much better than autocracy, because there is still chance to change the people on power. And we, as my organization, we work in plenty of developing countries, and I always try to explain to people that at least electoral democracy, the chance of changing the people on power, it's much better than anything else, and we can't expect that the full-fledged democracies will appear in a few years after, you know. So I very much agree that it's at least something, but why the people are not, why it looks like that even the good part of public lost the interest to fight for deeper democracy in terms of more information, more transparency, more competent decision making. Why? Because it was including the progressivistic, you know, focus on relatively perfect details of functioning of let's say, European democracies, and there is a stagnation for the moment.
Can I
Yes,
answer this? Right? Well, I don't think people lost, you know, the appeal of democracy, and I think people are fighting. The problem is that there are two types of things, you know. I mean, think of people that we know, friends of ours, you know. In Ukraine, they had 2 revolutions. You know, and I'm going there constantly to discuss anti-corruption with people, and this nice little girl who takes me to airport asked me, I mean, actually, she says, how many revolutions are there needed for these countries to progress? I said, we already do 2, we can do 3, we can do 4, but how many are there needed, you know? The question is, they're very good at making revolutions, but what they do is that they lose the battle the next day after winning the revolution. And I think that this is the problem in many of our countries. So I think the crisis of democracies is that our societies, in young democracies in particular, no longer resembles with the 19th century European societies which gave birth to parties. However, we are trying to build democracy on the basis of parties, except that we do not have them. You know, in the 1960s in Europe, there were 30% people who are members in some parties. In our countries, there are 3–4% people. So in other words, the reason we lose the battle next day is actually it's the battle of representation that we lose. Of course, some people who do not represent anybody and who come to government will immediately do whatever it takes to get rich, to stay there, to control the media, to ensure ourselves, because there is no automatic way of controlling them. This way was provided by parties, you know, and it's not by chance that parties today are the most distrusted institutions globally in any survey. Trust in parties, it's under 10%. Even in Europe, there's a minority of countries, only 5 countries where people trust parties. So, in other words, maybe parties are gone. Personally, I think that in the era of Facebook and with the kind of societies we have today, I don't think we're ever going to revive the Republicans or the Democrats in the United States. And I think teaching to students the American voter or classic literature in the 70s, it's completely inadequate, seeing the kind of, you know, aggregation that they have to deal with in their societies. But something has to come up. We have to come up with different vehicles of representation, because the ones that we have now simply do not represent anybody, and therefore they're also not accountable to anybody in many countries. And this is a big difference between old democracies and new democracies, but I see that even in some old democracies, the support for all parties is eroding, and something new have not yet come up to get this energy, because the energy is there. People go into the streets when needed. But what do you do the next day after winning the street?
Michal, Freedom House follow the revolutions, and you were, for example, very much active, and you are still active in offering different technical support, knowledge, know-how to the movements which overthrown the dictators. And are we offering something which is too complicated for them, or is the younger generation not enough patient? I remember the students and young people who overthrown Mubarak in Egypt, and I was there just a few days later asking them, with the experience from a Czech Velvet Revolution, what's your plan? Where is your political committee? What's the next steps? And they answered, we don't have any structure. We don't want any leaders, we don't want any directors, we don't want any plan, we are just doing revolution. And I genuinely commented, but then you will fall. And they fall, of course. They would fall probably anyway, but do you think that we are able, from a sophisticated countries, to offer something which is useful for the people in Armenia now? It could be people, the people who are struggling in Myanmar, Burma for continuation, in Ukraine, in some of the Maghreb countries, in Tunisia, for example, or are we still able to offer something what's useful for them, for the people who are fighting for democracy? And do we have legitimacy to still offer it with our own problems home?
Yes. Well, I think that's a good point where I'd like to start off. I do think, obviously, groups like People in Need, Freedom House, others do have technical assistance and specific capacities that can be helpful to civil society. But I think there has been, over the last 20 years, particularly with my country, a loss of confidence, a cynicism about our country that, I'm talking about the United States, that might derive from the Iraq War, from other factors, and also the exemplification of democracy in our own societies. So I think really the first place to start is looking inwards at ourselves. I mean, for much of the Cold War, the United States, whatever its mistakes made, was a country that was, appealing to the people fighting for liberty in Czechoslovakia or other countries. I worry that that might not be the case anymore. We have turned away from support of human rights and democracy in our own foreign policy, but more significant, we don't practice democracy in a way as effectively as we once did. We did a poll at Freedom House over the summer to look at American attitudes towards democracy, and it was very interesting. I think in general, as Alina was suggesting, globally, people still believe in the ideals of democracy. They believe in, they overwhelmingly want to live in democratic societies, but they have lost confidence in the kind of practical functioning of democracy. At least half of the people that we surveyed, and this cuts across partisan divides, felt that American democracy was weak, and that 2/3 felt that it was getting weaker. And so when the United States is in a position in which there are fierce attacks on fake news, or fierce attacks on the independent civil society, or fierce attacks on rule of law, even though we still have a very robust democracy and civil society is in many ways still strong, people around the world look at it and say, well, why are you lecturing to us? So I think getting our own house in order is very important. I really believe that the cause of global democracy will advance if the United States returns to being a very strong proponent and live out these values.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Deputy Minister, we just passed elections 2 days ago, and it looks that traditional parties lost, basically, except one which very much built the support on an anti-tolerance, anti-migration, anti-liberal rhetorics, basically, or it has two faces, but it's a bit too complicated for the international public. But who got a big support, and it's not the case of these elections, but last few years, and we can see it all around Europe, are the people who are coming with a very simplistic and simple messages, with offering that I am the strong one, I will show the strong hand, strong rule, strong management, and I will let you through the times of uncertainty, because I think a lot of people feel uncertain. Why the traditional parties, including your, are losing too much, and what we are doing wrong?
I've already mentioned that if the liberal democracy is to maintain its appeal, it's also about the ability to deliver, about its output legitimacy. I think that we have lost the ability to explain that the societies we are living in are still able to improve the people's life and to maintain social cohesion of our societies and to not leave anybody lag behind. I think that we have also lost over the last 30 years a little bit of our understanding that the society is based on solidarity, and that our society, which was so much enthusiastic about democracy in early 90s, now is a little bit losing the track, and we are not able to face the fact that at the national levels we are very often not delivering, but at the level of communities we are not able to grasp the processes there and to combine it together. I think through new technologies we have enhanced people's ability to cooperate, to work together at the level of their communities, of their small cities. They are really doing great work there, and for traditional parties it has been hard to combine both the ability to be involved in the daily life of their communities and at the same time to deliver at the national level the reforms, or the policy making process are not considered to be very effective. And these are the two challenges for traditional parties to face.
Thank you. My feeling is sometimes that also we lack the strong leaders, or the traditional parties lack the strong leaders. And generally, I think that at least the European public expect that we are entering difficult times due to different processes around the globe. And especially in Central Eastern Europe, the people don't see as strong leaders in the traditional parties, and they are, I think, kind of naturally, some of them looking for someone to whom they can trust if the storm or difficult times will come. So that's a part of the problem. But you mentioned what we can offer, experiences, and it's definitely interesting if our countries, Romania, Czech Republic, are still going to offer some of the experiences from the transition from 90s and last decade, including the mistakes, because we made some very, very deep structural mistakes. Do you feel that there is an interest outside of Europe, maybe in Balkans, maybe in former Soviet Union or elsewhere, for the Romanian or Czechoslovak experience? Or can we still offer something? Is it relevant?
Well, you know, I mean, I always avoid to offer Romania as an example. You know, I was 25 when the well went down, and I grew up in Ceausescu's Romania, and I only once dared to suggest that Romania might be an example to Aung Suu Kyi. And she was absolutely appalled, and she says, oh, but you know, Myanmar was never as bad as Romania, so I am not going to offer Romania, which seems to be like the absolute pole of bad. But honestly speaking, I think one thing that we should teach people is how to moderate their expectations, because many democracies perish. I think Romania came a long way. I'm not among the people who are pessimistic about my country at all. And I think that the phenomena that we're discussing are global phenomena. I live in Berlin. I live 15 minutes away from two counties, two Länder, where actually voters last elections returned a majority for the extremist parties, for Alternative for Germany, plus the former Communist Party, the Linke Party. Their voters got together more than Christian Democrats and Social Democrats put together. And if you look around, you ask yourself why. I mean, it's been all this Western money, the solidarity tax for this Länder. It's been wonderful European money from which they restored their splendid Saxon churches. And still voters in Brandenburg and Saxony-Anhalt feel very seriously disenchanted. They have the impression that somebody else won this transition and they lost it. You know, I mean, in the Czech Republic or in Romania, we would just say they're old, you know, old communist time pensioners who are just resentful that the world didn't stay at their level and moved on, right? But there, I think the challenge is, because what we see is that traditional elites representing people lose at the ballot box. And I think some degree of elite replacement in politics, it's normal. It's fine to have, you know, pirates or whoever coming in. Where I think the real problem is first, if people who come over are Democrats, they're at least willing to leave when they lose office, as the people before. And in some countries, I think electorates do not take enough guarantees when swearing in new people. And the second thing, are they going to do better in the game of representation? Are they going to move from the 200 or 2,000 group of smart people with Facebook, which got themselves elected, to a really representative group of people who are able to build some social accountability, discuss with stakeholders, and deliver things for groups with whom they have a strong connection? I think that's the question. Otherwise, elites are going to be replaced. And, you know, it's a bigger resentment against us these days. I don't take an Uber in the United States without the driver lecturing me that America is in this dire shape due to MBA graduates from Harvard and MIT and people with education in general. And people like Mr. Trump actually won on this resentment against educated elite who are perceived to have been very selfish. And that we have to do something about this, but a part of the answer is that we are going to be replaced. New people with degrees from different universities are going to replace us, and maybe that's not altogether bad.
Thank you. So what we are doing wrong as elites, that we are not anymore appealing for the ordinary people? Are we not able to translate it, or are we just polishing the benches on the board of the ocean ship where the ordinary people feel that the ship is sinking because of the holes under the water? Are we not enough simple, or are we not enough authentic? What are the reasons? Because you know, you can find it everywhere, in Central Europe, in Western Europe, in Brexit, in US, very similar symptoms of the changes of the part of the voters' preferences shows very similar symptoms. So what we are doing wrong?
Well, let me make a couple points if I could.
Absolutely.
First of all, I agree that, you know, the traditional parties have, you know, lost touch with broad middle class concerns in many countries. So that clearly was a factor in my country in terms of explaining the election of Donald Trump. I do feel that one issue that we really have to kind of put on the table is the issue of immigration. And I think that the failure of countries to, you know, really take into account the concerns of citizens about, you know, unrestrained immigration, you know, has been a problem. And there's a great association, I think, of ordinary people with liberal democracy and totally open borders. I think that we need to be able to take into account concerns about that, but also making the point that societies really benefit from being a magnet for immigrants. I mean, that's really one of the great strengths of the United States. But I also want to make another point, if I could, which is that I think it's very important for us to really stay focused on the core freedoms and the core principles of democracy. I think if Donald Trump or Law and Justice or Fidesz is elected in a free and fair election, you know, our tradition is they should have the right to implement the policies that they came into power promising. The problem is, and I think this is where I think really where we're particularly concerned at Freedom House, is that what you see in country after country, you know, the would-be Democrats being able to rig the system to be able to stay in power, not for 4 or 8 years, but forever. And that's really a major problem. If you look at Freedom House scores, the three sort of broad areas where where countries have deteriorated over the last 10 years are one, in the area of media, free expression, the independent media, number two, rule of law and the judiciary, and number three, kind of corruption, transparency. And that's really the toolkit that's being used by autocrats to stay in power, right? That they have elections, but they are undermining the ability of the people to select alternatives. And that's what I really think we should be focused on.
Thank you. I will have another question to Mr. Deputy Minister, but before that, we have an innovation. This is microphone, which I'm supposed to throw to the people which want to pose the questions. So prepare your questions. It's relatively light, you know, and I was always good in throwing the stones and other things as a boy, so I will try to be focused. No, I'm just opening the floor in few minutes for your questions, so get ready. And in the meantime, let me to ask you, Mr. Petříček, Czech Republic was for the last 20 years quite proud on offering some of the experiences abroad, including supporting civil society and the projects which try to build on the Czech mistakes, but also Czech gains. And I must say, I underline the mistakes. I am one of the people who were part of the student struggle against the communism, and I was very naive in the beginning of 90s. My father told me, you know, it will take 2 generations. And my answer was, no, you know, I was 23, 10 years and it will be fixed, maybe 15, and we are still on the way with a lot of the problems. So do you think that it should be still integral part of what we offer, the experiences, including the mistakes and failures which we went through?
I still believe that we can provide this experience to our friends and partners all around the world, and the human rights agenda, I think, is still part of our foreign policy, and it should maintain its standing as one of our priorities. And I'm always saying that even with your friend, and if it's real friend, you should be open and you should be able to discuss also issues your friend doesn't like very much. And it doesn't mean that you are going to cease to be friends. But with our honesty and openness in our dialogue with our partners, we cannot really promote the values our societies are founded on. And I think that we, as a generation of 1989, should promote the values of a society we have been growing up and we are living in. And for me, it's particularly important to show that these values are not, cannot be taken for granted, and we still need to fight for them.
That's definitely good, because as Michal mentioned and others, some of the countries turn, at least politically, you know, more to other side from the support, and it's even more difficult for our colleagues from civil society in the non-free autocratic countries which are struggling, fighting and hoping for our support, or at least our interest. And I think for Central Eastern Europe, it's especially towards the former Soviet Union, for example, it's a basically necessity to continue somehow, because the colleagues there expect that we will not forget them, basically. And we are definitely closer to them than Norwegians or our friends from US. Are there any questions to our discussion already there? I don't know, I did not train it, so maybe let me to do it like that. And then you should send it. This is the microphone.
Yes, microphone, thanks. Leila Yunus, human rights defenders from former Soviet Union, Azerbaijan, and former political prisoners. I have questions to Frau Alin. You know, we start our human rights activity in Soviet Union, and we really believe for democracy, for freedoms. But what we can told to new generation who growing in dictatorship Azerbaijan, where we have about 200 political prisoners, where all of us go through prison and through tortures. And each year, about 10 people died after tortures in prison. And this dictator regime, who has oil, has support in Europe. From PASSE, great support from European Union, very welcome in Paris, and Paris president will be next month in Baku. What we can explain to our new generation about freedom, about that in Europe you respect freedom, about 3 billion euros our horrible dictatorship Ilham Aliyev spent to buy the members of Parliament Assembly of Council of Europe. I do not know how many money he spent to buy members of European Parliament, but in July of this year, in Brussels, Azerbaijan signed the Eastern Partnership and so on. So what we can do in our dictatorship tomorrow in Azerbaijan can be new Syria. What we can do, where we can receive some support. In Soviet Union we received, we was together, it was solidarity, but now we stay alone.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. We will take 2-3 questions in a row and then somehow sum it up, and the panelists will answer. There are the, on the left side.
Thank you very much. My name is Haikuhi, and I come from Armenia, from human rights organization. Of course, I'm very happy to hear about Armenia as inspiring example for a new democracy. But at the same time, I wouldn't like to hear about the same example as a failure later. And then my question is, what would be the support or possible assistance of international community, as you see, to the country to sustain these outcomes of revolution and new democracy as an example also for the region?
Thank you. It was very clear. Next.
My name is Andreas Bowman. I represent Democracy Without Borders. And in our assessment, globalizing forces, and I can't go into much detail right now, are contributing to undermining traditional and established democratic institutions at the nation-state level. And the question is, shouldn't it be part of a counter-strategy to actually globalize democratic participation and representation too, in order not just to democratize international institutions, but also as a process to strengthen democratic forces at the nation-state level?
Thank you. One more. There are some people over there.
Thank you. I have a direct question to Mr. Michael Abramovich. I'm from Congo-Brazzaville, and in 2016, Sassou Nguesso just hijacked the presidential election, cut the internet, and then imprisoned, jail his main opponent, Mr. Mokoko and Mr. Okombi Salisa. They are still in jail. Some of them have been on court, some of them not. They can't see the light. And the people and the civil society go out of the street, they get banned, killed, and over. So what can your organization, Freedom House, can do to help us achieve democratic change in Congo? Thank you.
Okay, and one last question in the first round.
I'm Boris Sokolov from Russia. I want to ask all 4 participants what we really should do with the countries of Europe where you should not to upgrade, but should to install democracy really. I mean Russia, Azerbaijan, for some extent, Georgia, Belarus, of course. Should the democratic leaders, the leaders of democratic countries, to cooperate with such states, for example, in constructing Nord Stream 2? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first question was to Alina, what the activists or can tell to young generation now if they see, in case of Azerbaijan, that basically Europeans are not, or some of them not standing for the principles, for values, that it's possible to buy them, to cope them, whatever.
Yes, thank you for this. First, I'll start by stating clearly that I'm completely ashamed by the way in Europe that we treat Azerbaijan or other crony dictatorships in the Caucasus, and I've been with friends of mine more than once petitioning the European Parliament or the Commission on behalf of opposition groups in Azerbaijan. But in the same time, we've heard this story from Armenia. So again, I would like to put it to you a little bit like this. Windows of opportunity, or if you want, you know, fortune and misfortune, do not happen similarly to all of us everywhere. A country can be in dire shape in Azerbaijan, but next door in Armenia, look, we have a window of opportunity. So my first answer would be that young people from Azerbaijan should look to what happened in Armenia and tell themselves this can happen to us as well. You know, even if it happened before and it didn't turn out so well, it will happen again. It will happen again for sure. But also people have to be realistic and understand that this Europe and United States are not what they used to be. This is actually the most dramatic thing that we have to understand. There is no longer a big brother, and you know, that's not news also. We are young. We grew up in times where we really felt we could rely on Council of Europe was important for Romania. Council of Europe doesn't matter anymore. United States was important for Romania. The United States is not going to play the same role it did. So it's quite important for people in those countries to understand that they have to be ready for the windows of opportunity which will appear, but they will not look up to someone else coming from outside to clean their countries. This is not going to happen. And when you have a window of opportunity, you have to score. You have to do the little bit that you can, because countries, you know, I've just finished a very optimistic book. This very optimistic book, I look at the 7 countries around the world which in the past 40 years managed to move from systematic corruption to corruption as an exception. And it's really a wonderful story because you can go, I travel to these countries and you see that people know that they've done it. They're basically deep democratization stories. You know, there are countries like Estonia, like Taiwan, like Uruguay, tiny countries, but which have made them themselves. And they've managed to get there by having smart, well-prepared elites who are able at each window of opportunity to do a little bit more independence of the judiciary, a little bit more autonomy of bureaucrats from political parties or from whoever ruled. This is it. From Europe, the only good thing that I can say about us, because I'm ashamed, I heard 2, 3 other critical questions about the European democracy policies. Believe us, Europe is in a very weak moment. If you want to shame us, look how we behave with Turkey. It's very easy to shame Europe these days. The thing is, it's an existential threat to Europe as well. Just don't imagine Europe is so mighty as it used to be. We have a wonderful institution in Europe, which I think at the start was actually copied from an American model, the European Endowment for Democracy. I know they supported the Armenian opposition paper, which played such a role, and I'm sure they're also helping people in Azerbaijan as well. And my effort as an advocate and an expert of the European Commission is to convince Europe that our help for democracy doesn't go through classic EU projects, but go through flexible, dynamic, and more daring to support opposition institutions like the European Endowment for Democracy. That's all I can say, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Let me to combine 2 things. What we can, the question from Congo-Brazzaville, it's very, very, let's say, narrow, but I will still ask Michael to comment it, what we as international institutions supporting democracy can do for colleagues, for the civil society activists in Congo-Brazzaville. And if you can add a bit about what might be what we can offer to Armenian activists and movement to help them to sustain the momentum and to go through this very difficult period, because expectations are high. As you mentioned, Alina, it's not the first round of expectations since the end of the Soviet Union, and with every 5-10 years it's more and more difficult, because the original hope was already lost few times, so it's more and more difficult. So if you can comment these two questions, thank you. And maybe conclude with plea for more coordination and more stronger networking between the democratic forces against the other forces which are existing and trying to undermine the liberal democracies and Europe.
Well, a couple of points. First of all, I think it's important with countries like Armenia, Congo, for all of us, not to forget the people that are in jail. I mean, it's important for people not to be forgotten, and that we all as organizations, it seems kind of simple and basic, but we have to be speaking out, we have to be raising their cases with the relevant authorities. So that, is point number one. At Freedom House, like People in Need, we do a lot of work in terms of supporting activists who get in trouble. Helping them with, legal assistance, helping them, relocate, many different, forms. But to me, this is kind of treating, in some ways, very important work, and it's, it's the heart of what Freedom House does, but it's in some ways, it's also a little bit of like treating the symptom and not the fundamental problem. And I continue to come back that our primary goal must be to try to get the European Union and the United States, to take the issues of human rights and democracy more seriously. If members of the European Union are violating, fundamental freedoms or violating the judiciary systems, the Constitution, and the EU doesn't do anything, then how can the rest of us do much to do that? And if the United States is not speaking out on behalf of not just the favored human rights groups in places like Venezuela or Iran, but if they're not speaking out on behalf of the people whose rights are being violated in Saudi Arabia or countries like that, then I think it's very difficult for the rest of us. So I think it's very important for us to help human rights activists and help the democracy activists directly, but also we need to be lifting our advocacy voice to make sure that our governments are really fighting powerfully for democracy and human rights. And at least making sure that these people, making the case that these issues are important to our governments and are not just an afterthought to matters of grand strategy and matters of trade.
Thank you. The concrete question, what we can offer, especially to countries like Russia, Azerbaijan, how to help to restore the democracy, I think we already somehow discuss it partially, that it's a very long process and that it should come within the countries. I'm not sure that we are able to offer more than we were offering last 2 decades.
Well, we can offer sanctions, we do that.
Yeah, the sanctions, but yeah.
We can do more sanctions, but no country ever became fully democratic or more clean just by the way of sanctions. It's insufficient.
What I think is interesting, it's a question.
On the sanctions
yes,
point, I do think this global Magnitsky movement, has potential power. There are many countries, a number of countries, not just the United States, that are, passing laws which allow the governments to go after individuals, not just the broad countries, but the individuals who are violating human rights on a broad scale, who are corrupt. And this is a potential tool that I think we should really be developing. And I would think that, one thing that human rights activists and people in these countries can do is bring to groups like Freedom House or others or People in Need the cases of individuals who ought to be sanctioned and bring them to the governments. And I think that has potential power over the long term as a way of, because if you hit them in the pocketbook, that is something that could have some long-term impact.
Yeah. Certainly it's one of the options how to make the things a little bit more concrete?
I can volunteer a country immediately, right? Because I've just been there. The Republic of Moldova, they've always had their problems and their many faults, but for the first time the result of a legal elections was invalidated. And when this happens, it's actually the end, because if you no longer, country will start going down. It's very simple to see who's done it. It's very simple to see who has politicized all these institutions, and it's using the judiciary to start arresting their opponents. These individuals are also the money launderers for Russia, so they exactly committed the same kind of offenses and in the Magnitsky affair. So they should be sanctioned and they should be out of there. You know, if there are to be free elections, these free elections should be without them. That's very as simple as that. You know, and it's not Turkey, it's one of the countries where you can do this. Of course, the real question is if you should do against small states, actually to help small states, things that you cannot do for Russia and for Turkey. And I really think it should be on the basis of demand. Do people in that country really want this to happen or not? And I think that if they want, definitely that's what we should do. We should sanction these kleptocrats who capture countries.
Yeah. Well, true that we are getting to the suggestion of better coordination or cooperation on our side, while the other side looks it's getting more sophisticated, more organized, the disinformations, the fake news, the propaganda, the learning curve between the autocrats. They are meeting often and really learning, because the globalization, it's showing also the dark side, the global autocracy, global oppression. You know, we have to understand that they feel our weakness, and that of course increase their self-confidence. That's what's happening globally. But in terms of better coordination, do you feel that, what's the way to better coordination and better cooperation, at least on the European level, EU level, in the cases like Moldova or some? Are we eventually getting closer to that? Is the understanding of how important is one voice, clear voice, strong voice of EU to our neighbors increasing? I'm not sure.
Let me just react very briefly on the debate you have on this. What are we doing and what the other side is capable to do. I believe that we are now in a situation we are even contributing to empowering these forces, these anti-democratic forces, by not sticking to rules-based international system, by undermining international law and showing to them that even us, even our side is not following the rules we have adopted in the past, and if there is something where we need to give a light to the people in undemocratic societies, that democracy, the liberal democracy, is a rules-based society, and it should be part of rules-based international system. By us weakening international law and other international institutions, we are opening a space for these undemocratic forces as well. On the better coordination, I believe that there is still a lot to do on this, but there are new initiatives, at least at the level of the European Union, to make our coordination and our external actions more effective. There is a new initiative to introduce majority voting into common foreign and security policy, which is a big debate ahead of us. And I believe that the EU is at the moment capable of sticking to a common position, and the issue is how quickly we will be able to react on situation in the world which is changing very fast, and we need more flexibility, and we need to speed up the internal processes in the EU.
May I ask you, what is the prognosis? Prognosis for our own US and Europe self-confidence and fitness regarding our democracy, and also what's probably very important for the public here, if we will be able to continue and partially restore what we offer the others, which still looks towards US and Europe as the examples, as the role models, as something where they can get. What's your prognosis for the next 5-10 years on the democracy home and democracy abroad?
Look, I think we're going to be in a situation in which there's not going to be a magic bullet that solves these problems. It's a constant fight. It's a constant battle to try to push to live a more these values at home, and to also also to support them abroad. I would just like to single out one particular issue, if I could, that I am deeply concerned about as a former journalist, and I think greater attention to the challenges of the of journalists and the media. I mean, as I go around the world, I mean, I just see 2 or 3 problems that are just, and you just saw in the last 4 or 5 days, where apparently there was a murder in the Turkish consulate of the Saudis of a journalist. Just I read the paper, there was a new murder yesterday in Bulgaria of a journalist who's investigating corruption. I mean, this is real. We are seeing, and according to our reports, much greater pressure and physical intimidation on journalists that is really of great concern. Number 2, you're seeing countries like Russia, China, others really trying to exert more control in the internet space, and you see in Turkey the same kind of thing going on. So I think it's very important for democratic countries to really be much more forceful about the importance of the independent media. And I say that too of our own country. The Washington Post made the point that one of our greatest exports, sadly, in the last year has been the term fake news. And what we see is dozens of countries who are not friends of democracy using that word to crack down on journalists, to crack down on the internet. And so we need to be much more careful about the words we use and really make it clear that at the heart of a functioning democracy is an independent media that can hold governments accountable. And so that's something that I think we should really be redoubling our efforts in over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Deputy Minister.
I remain optimistic when it comes to democracy, especially when it comes to liberal democracy. But you are right, we have huge challenges ahead of us. For example, you mentioned the wave of information, disinformation, which are now coming to the public space and influencing the people's opinion, people's behavior. And the key to face it is to improve our education and to foster critical thinking in our societies, which is a substantial part of improving the resilience of the society itself. It's not about resilience of the institutions only, but about the society as such. And I believe that we are in a position to really refuse any debate about alternatives to liberal democracy. I don't think that our societies should even consider questions like, is there alternative to it? Can we discuss non-liberal democracy, managed democracy, whatsoever? A Polish friend of mine told a good story that the difference between liberal democracy and the other democracies is like a chair and electric chair. And I believe that this is something we should really explain to our people, to citizens, that the alternative to liberal democracy is not the way forward.
And the update, that's a main topic of the forum, democracy and the need of critical update. Do you have any ideas about how we can update the democracy to be more appealing, more clear for the citizens, for us in Europe, but also outside partially?
I think we have new technologies to use to empower people to be involved in politics, in decision-making processes, and we can see it already now at a very grassroots level that people are able to organize activities in their communities, and we should allow them to use these tools, to critically use these tools to build their activities at other levels, and to really open the space in the political area for people to really participate and to influence the decision making.
Thank you. Of course, your prognosis, but because you are the side thinker which can really be provocative, what kind of updates or what kind of the assurance we can offer the public if part of the public is really uncertain about the future, and the reason why they are turning from traditional parties and liberal democratic processes is probably partial that they think that it's too slow, endless discussions, too difficult to find a compromise, and that the era, because of the changing of the power games around the globe, partially because of still the shock from economical crisis, which we somehow still feel, I think, partially because of immigration or migration issues, what could be done to assure the people that the liberal democracy, liberal democratic politicians and processes will be able to steer through the difficult times better than the strong leaders, illiberal democracy, half autocratic way of deciding, or management-based democracy?
Well, I would say that we have to be realistic about the next 5-10 years. And the next 5-10 years, we are actually looking at the weakest leadership of Europe and the United States that we had in many years. However, we had bad periods of leadership of Europe and United States before, and there were other forces who, out of their own interest, international journalists, international business people who simply wanted to trade everywhere and were promoting the cause of global capitalism, who continue to advance our causes without being led from top state level. And we didn't have anything like this network or other networks of democracy around, which can also help be a vehicle of learning or of delivering aid to groups which fight for democracy. So I think that in the last 5 years, do not expect much leadership. Build your own. There are countries which are on a positive dynamics regardless of what's happened in Europe or in the United States. I think in Brazil, people are moving. In South Africa, people are moving. I mean, you see some improvement and the desire to move to a better quality of democracy. In Armenia and in other places, models do exist. Each country has to look around and ask themselves, like, what other country do I want to be? It's not what foreigners tell you to do, but whom you want to emulate, which really changes countries. This is what I found in my success stories. People who had a clear design, In Uruguay, they had a president who wanted to make Switzerland out of Uruguay. It took them 70 years and they're still not like Switzerland, but they're doing well enough, because this was a shared design in the country. People wanted to move there. And what I think we could do is, in our democracy promotion community, is simply to learn that things have changed a lot. And we should change as well. I mean, I think that the traditional way of helping the media, for instance, is no longer sufficient. The old business models in the media are gone. We have to think of different ways of funding, of giving audience, and of protecting journalists in endangered countries. And, things like this. It may sound very technical, but, there are times in history where people have to resist. You have to help people resist for the next window of opportunity. Windows of opportunities do happen. And Europe and United States will clear their own field eventually. Only right now, I think that the agency, the human agency in the country is the one which matters, and our role is to help these agencies with what we can, basically learning, money, and whenever we can, some diplomatic pressure or support.
Thank you. Do you want to comment?
Well, just the last point about, again, on the media, I do think that that is a real challenge that Democrats are going to have to figure out. I mean, the media environment has changed so much in the last 30 years that how do you, and the internet has become such a source not just of liberation, open debate, but a tool for authoritarians and extremist forces to capitalize on. I don't think we've figured out the kind of rules of the road for the internet and social media going forward. I wish I had an easy answer to it. I mean, the answer is not shutting down the internet, but we're going to have to figure out how to, educate young people and others about the difference between propaganda and fake news and real independent reporting. There's just a whole raft of issues, and I think the future of democracy really depends on an ability to figure out how to handle the internet more effectively.
Mr. Minister?
I would like to only comment very briefly that I agree that the informations are the media, the work of the media, are the key for the processes we are facing at the moment. We are ahead of them, and I think that the majority, huge majority in our societies, the silent majority, is still in favor of liberal democracy and sees the values as unbreakable. And the problem is that we need to face the minority parts of the society which are trying to undermine these values, and also external forces which are trying to weaken these values and to highlight the divisions in our societies. And this is something where we will have to work very hard and to really enable people to be more vocal and to speak on behalf of the vast majority of people who would like to live in a free society.
Thank you very much. I'm asked as a moderator to try to sum it up at the end. And if I understand well, and please correct me, the strong plea from the panelists was for let's say realism, that we should be realistic and understand that we are not in the best time in terms of our leadership, self-confidence, that we have a lot of the home problems connected to the fact that the elites partially lost the ability to explain the liberal democratic values, to address some of the social issues, also to address the rapidly changing environment of informational games or wars sometimes, especially on online, and to counterbalance the disinformations, including propaganda. So generally to understand that, and I think it's natural, no one is better and better and better in the private life, in business, in politics, in everything, that we are not in a best self-confidence time, but it doesn't mean that we should give up. There is both homework. Without the homework, we probably can't feel better and more self-confident and to be also more successful on the international field, because it is a competition and different illiberal models or autocratic models. The Chinese model, which is very specific because China is only one, but the Chinese model of an autocratic state or more and more centralized state, showing or pretending to be very effective also economically, and also Russia and others competing with Europe and US are doing a lot in the last few years, but it doesn't mean that we should give up. It's more that to be realistic means that we have to understand that the things might take more time than we expected, and that it's very much on the side of the people in those countries, because it's a genuine struggle of the people there for better life, more transparency, less corruption, let's say more democracy, and who we are outside than those who should show ideally better example than the weak moment in which we are now for different reasons. And the second thing, offer the support to the people who want to struggle for more human rights, more space, more freedom, more less corruption, more transparency in their own countries. So I know that it's not a great conclusion. There is not a single bullet, easy answer. What I take from this panel is what Joshua mentioned in the beginning, that the struggle for democracy is a long-term battle, and that we just have to continue because the time is on our side. Thank you. Thank you.